Guild Wars 3. Pretty hype, right? So for a lot of people, this is just another MMO announcement. Another trailer, another studio convinced they got the next WoW killer on their hands. But Guild Wars matters a lot more than people realize. Not because it's the biggest MMO, it isn't, and not because it defeated World of Warcraft, it didn't. Not even because Guild Wars 3 is somehow guaranteed to change the genre. We can't know that. Guild Wars matters because for the last 20 years, ArenaNet's approached MMORPGs differently than almost anyone else in the industry. While a lot of studios ask what features players want, ArenaNet has repeatedly asked a different question that sometimes gets to the same goals, but with a different motivation. ArenaNet's asked, what's getting in the player's way? And ultimately, the answer to that question gave us Guild Wars in 2005 and Guild Wars 2 in 2012. So while Guild Wars 1 aimed to take care of the buy the game, play the game with no subscription fee, and Guild Wars 2 set out to take care of things like a dynamic world without quest hubs, horizontal progression, and eliminating the holy trinity of DPS, tank, and healer, it doesn't seem like Guild Wars would be making a third installment if they were just planning on updating the graphics and hoping for another boost in sales when the game was released. Seems like ArenaNet has a deeper interest in solving the problems of what the MMO genre is currently going through. So, to understand why Guild Wars 3 might matter more than you think, we need to understand the company that creates it. And to understand ArenaNet, we need to go back to Blizzard Entertainment in the 1990s at the height of BattleNet. Right now, to understand the landscape of when ArenaNet was founded, we have to understand that EverQuest was really the only massively successful MMORPG that was in the market. So, when you think about ArenaNet, you need to understand that it wasn't founded by veterans trying to build the next EverQuest. It was founded by Mike O'Brien, Patrick Wyatt, and Jeff Strain. These absolute rock stars are the ones that are responsible for the development of BattleNet. It's one of the most influential online gaming platforms ever created. Mike O'Brien's role at Blizzard was lead programmer on BattleNet. He worked on networking architecture for Blizzard's online games, one of the primary technical architects behind Blizzard's online infrastructure. What he brought to ArenaNet was a deep expertise in large-scale online systems, networking architecture, and technical leadership. O'Brien wasn't simply making games, he was helping build the system that allowed millions of people to play together online. In a large way, Mike probably contributed to Blizzard's ability to create World of Warcraft systems and infrastructure. When Guild Wars launched with seamless functionality and no subscription, it wasn't an accident. ArenaNet had one of the people who helped define online gaming infrastructure in the first place. Patrick Wyatt, his role at Blizzard was lead programmer on Warcraft 2 and StarCraft. He was one of the principal architects of BattleNet. So what he brought to ArenaNet was the RTS system design mindset, competitive multiplayer experience, and a deep understanding of player interaction and balance. So when Guild Wars 1's build crafting DNA felt very different from other traditional MMOs, it was largely because Patrick's contribution to the development of the game. A lot of the design concepts in Guild Wars 1 feel more like competitive strategy than traditional MMORPG thinking, and why its influence is often overlooked, but Guild Wars' focus on builds rather than gear likely owes something to that background. And lastly, Jeff Strain, whose contribution to this is maybe not as high level as a lead programmer, but he did contribute on StarCraft as a programmer, he was a BattleNet contributor, and he did online systems development. What Jeff brought to the table was studio leadership and an understanding of live service games before the term was even a concept. It seems like Jeff had just an intuitive understanding of not just how players played games, but how communities formed around them. So these legends were the ones that left Blizzard. So this is where it starts to get interesting, because in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, they were arguably Blizzard's golden era. At the time, Diablo 2 was becoming a phenomenon, StarCraft was dominating esports, BattleNet was revolutionizing online gaming, and Warcraft 3 was in development. Blizzard was not struggling. Leaving Blizzard during that period wasn't like abandoning a sinking ship. It was leaving one of the most successful game companies in the world. That alone suggests they weren't motivated simply by opportunity. They believed they could build something Blizzard wasn't building. So, looking across Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, a pattern begins to emerge. ArenaNet doesn't seem to start with features. It starts with player friction. Guild Wars asked, what if players didn't have to pay a monthly subscription to enjoy online RPGs? Guild Wars 2, similarly, asked the questions that were plaguing the MMO genre at the time. What if players weren't punished for exploring? What if helping another player was always beneficial? What if progression didn't become obsolete every expansion? What if mounts were more than movement speed buffs? The resulting systems weren't simply there because they were immersive. They weren't there because they were realistic. These things were in the games because they were attempts to remove barriers between players and fun. That's an important distinction. Many game studios talk about customers. ArenaNet has historically talked about players. Customers generate revenue, players play games. And regardless of how you see your player base, whether it be a customer or a player, you're still going to give them things like mounts and cosmetics. But the motivation behind providing those to the players is going to change how they engage with the game to earn those things and how it feels when you use them. It's a mouthful to say all these things in a list. But Guild Wars' buy-to-play model, account-wide progression, cooperative event structure, horizontal progression, and open-world philosophy all point towards one common goal. Let players spend less time thinking about the business of the game and more time playing it. So why does Guild Wars 3 matter? If you're like me, MMOs feel incredibly stale right now. MMOs in general feel incredibly lost in what they're trying to become. Ultimately, I don't see anyone innovating on fun, but I do see innovations from organizations that are trying to squeeze every last penny out of their player base. And I'm not saying that ArenaNet is some kind of mystical oracle that knows how to solve all the problems of the MMO genre. That's not the point. The important thing that I'm getting at is that they're willing to challenge assumptions that everyone else is just accepting. And that's what makes Guild Wars 3 interesting. The MMO genre isn't dying, but it is aging. Many of the biggest games in the genre today were released over a decade ago. The genre doesn't necessarily need another WoW. It doesn't necessarily need another Final Fantasy XIV. What it needs are studios willing to question the things we've all accepted as normal. That's what Guild Wars has always done. And that's why Guild Wars 3 matters more than people think. Not because we know what it will be, but because we know who's making it. And if ArenaNet's history is any indication, the most important question surrounding Guild Wars 3 isn't, what features will it have? It's, what player problems are they trying to solve next? And honestly, I can't think of a more interesting question to ask about the future of MMOs.